Wonder who it could be. Hello, bud.
Hey,
how are you, man?
How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having us. What a beautiful spot.
Oh, thank you. Hey, what's up, guys? Tony Gonzalez here. Welcome to the newest episode of Wide Open, the podcast. I am joined today by Ethan Brown, owner, CEO of Beyond Meat, the company that I was an investor to. So I'm actually looking forward to sitting down. We've talked before, Ethan, but first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Big fan of yours, so it's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here because a lot of questions, health questions, business questions. Obviously, you built this incredible company. You guys are, should I say we? Can I say we? Or,
yeah,
we are in.
Oh, that's a privilege. Yeah, thank you.
We're in Carl's Jr. now.
Yeah.
We're in McDonald's in Canada,
yep.
right? They're doing a trial run.
Yeah, they just expanded today.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Yep.
All over the place. The company has exploded. And I've been a part of it now for what, maybe 3 years or something like that.
I feel like longer than that we've been talking for sure. But yeah, but I think we did a deal a few years ago. Yeah.
It's been a while. By the way, it was a good investment. It worked out well. But I think at the latest 2019, the last time it's been evaluated at $11.7 billion.
So yeah, we had a really big run up right after the IPO. And now I think our share is trading about $83, $84 a share right now today.
Which is great.
So,
huh?
Yeah, it's good.
It's been good.
It's good.
Life-changing, huh?
It has been. Yeah. Yeah.
Geez. Well, let's start from the beginning though. Where did you grow up? Just quick backstory. How did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
Sure. So I grew up back east in DC and in Maryland. My parents, my father's a professor. He's at McGill now. But when I was growing up, he's at the University of Maryland. And so I was obviously nowhere near as talented as you are athletically, but I did have the benefit of having the University of Maryland in my backyard, essentially. So I went to all the football camps, basketball camps, et cetera, and really enjoyed athletics growing up. But a big part of my life was also, we have a farm that's in the western part of the state, Maryland, and my dad grew up in the country and really loves the country, and so wanted to make sure that we had that exposure and ability to connect with the outdoors. And so a lot of weekends in summertime, we'd be up there, and it was supposed to be a place just to recreate, but he turned it into a dairy operation, and so a little side business for us. And so I had a lot of exposure to agriculture growing up that I think informs how I think today.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of, so do you had animals and stuff like that? Yeah. So dairy farming is like cows and stuff like that.
We had Holstein cattle. We had about 100 head of Holstein cattle.
Really? Meat eating family?
Oh yeah. I ate a lot of meat growing up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also I heard you got into electricity. Right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
You got, what did you want to be when you were younger?
Yeah. So I like most kids. I mean, I had real dreams of different things at different stages in my life. But the youngest that I can remember, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and I read a lot about vets and things like that as a kid. But then I wanted to be a basketball player. Like a lot of kids. But as I got into education and secondary, and then into college and graduate school, I really started to focus on the issue of climate and began to look at what's causing all these emissions. And, a lot of the emphasis when I was in school was around automotive and the impact that using fossil fuel for transportation was having on what we call the carbon sink. It was just filling the sink with more and more carbon and running out of atmosphere to store it. And so the climate getting warmer and warmer. And so getting out of graduate school, I began to think about, how do I make an impact in that way? I did some other things, but that was really my main focus, and got into energy. Because I wanted to support renewable and alternative energy. So at first, one of the things I worked on was the electricity grid, and was essentially deregulating that so that more and more renewable energy could come into the marketplace. But I got into fuel cells after that, which hydrogen-powered fuel cells is a great way to power a car. That I think Toyota now has some that do it. But ultimately began to realize that livestock was the elephant in the room. There was an enormous amount of emissions coming, not only in just terms of the sheer number or amount of emissions, but the type. So methane versus carbon, for example, and the impact that was having on the world, and wanted to think about things differently and how I could potentially make a contribution there.
Who was the biggest impact on you? Did you have a mentor growing up?
Oh man, I did.
Somebody that was like, hey, this is where you got to go. I'm going to guide you. Who was that person?
I've been very blessed in that regard to have people around me when I was growing up that just had such an impact on me. My grandparents were really important to me as a kid, and my father, my mother, and my father from a career perspective, probably the most important and influential person. And he and I are still in touch today, several times a week. Just when I was leaving school, I was kind of complaining to him in his office up at the university saying, yeah, I wanted to have a little more fun. I wanted to go up to New York, meet my friends, things like that. And we're talking about my career and what I wanted to do in my career. And I'd just gotten back. I was working overseas. I was in Bosnia, and I was doing work. It was right after the war there on helping to set up elections there just to see the world. I was a low-level bureaucrat, probably the lowest level you could be, but it was great. I loved it. And I was just thinking about kind of what new adventure I wanted to have. And he made the point to me that, at some point you got to think about your career over the long term and figure out a framework for how to answer that question of what you want to do with your life. And so the way he posed it to me was sort of, what's the biggest problem in the world that you see? Didn't tell me what it was. And I thought about that. There's tons of problems. There's racial justice issues. There's health crises. There's all kinds of things, war. But I tried to step back and think about what's the most overarching issue that I could address. And if climate becomes destabilized, everything gets destabilized, right? If you look what's happening now in Australia, what's been happening here in California, it has a comprehensive impact. And so I said, well, probably climate is the biggest issue of my generation. And so he said, well, work on that. And that's really what I started doing.
I love that question. I think, I have 4 kids, you have children, and a big question that comes up for anybody, we all go to college or whatever it is when education stops and it's time to go into the real world. What should I do? Instead of saying like, what's a better way to attack that question is saying, what problems do you want to solve? Not really about what you want to do.
Well, what's really special about that, and is a blessing and maybe a little bit, can create challenges at some point, but if you approach that as a singular question, what contribution can you make, what's your calling and what's your career, then all of a sudden your career isn't just going to work. It's you're answering a calling, right? And the power that you can get from that, right? And the passion you can draw from that is so much stronger. Now, if you try to separate those two, you don't have access to that wealth of passion and intensity.
And so from there, was it straight into, okay, I'm going to come up with the next alternative meat? I mean, how did it go from there?
It's interesting. I wish it was. When I was in my early 20s, I invested in a company called Worthington Foods that was making and you've led this sector for many years with your choices and just being out on the forefront. And maybe you can relate to this, as somebody that had a traditional education and been sort of trained in various things, and I was anxious about what my peers would think, what my family would think if I sort of walked away from the energy business that I was in and started this crazy idea. Would it be seen as hippie-like? Would it be seen as sort of, what's he doing? Going out to the woods here and trying to build a tofu factory, type of thing, which was not what I wanted. And so it took me a while to get the courage to make such a change in my career, right? Because, I had a pretty good run going in energy, and I felt that I was making, a career for myself there. And then all of a sudden to go into something around, that can be often derisively, referred to as sort of hippie-like and things like that, I was anxious about that. And so I probably stalled on this for many years and didn't do it as quickly as I could. And so the Worthington thing was important to me because I realized early, that's a company that was making plant-based burgers. They weren't anything like what we make, and I realized I had made an investment and it did well. They were bought by Kellogg, right? And so I was like, well, maybe I can merge the interests that I have into a business, right? And so, after a lot of soul searching and taking risk, I said, I'm going to leave my job. I'm going to go do this.
What was it? Was there a particular moment where was it an aha moment, or was it just sitting in the room saying, I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of feeling the way I do, and I got to go for it. Like I'm always, for our listeners, I'm always looking for that. Is it something that's huge? Or was it a huge impact, like the transformative power of crisis, I always call it? Yeah. Or was it, like you said, or was it just gradual and then eventually you woke up one day and said, today is different than it was yesterday, and I'm going to go for it? That's
a great question. Let me think about that. Because for me, it was both gradual in the sense that, over time it kept eating at me. But I didn't get uncomfortable enough until certain things started to happen, right? And it was that discomfort that finally drove me. It wasn't anything else really. It was as my kids were born, we started making food choices for them, and I realized that I was making the same food choices my parents made, and I realized that if we kept doing that, I had this idea inside of me And if I just ignored it, I'm going to live my life and that would be it. And I wouldn't have a chance to do this, right? So I think it was seeing my own kids start to feed into a system that I didn't agree with that made me say, and there were little instances like we were on, I won't mention the chain, but we were on the Turnpike when they were real little. And it came time, you can't find Jersey Turnpike, you can't find a lot of really healthy things to eat there, right? And so we were buying something and I said, I just can't keep doing this. I know there's a better way to do this and I'm going to make a change. And I think that was probably one of the biggest moments.
At this point, were you still eating meat?
I myself wasn't, but my family was.
Are you a vegan?
I am vegan.
Yeah. And you've been vegan for
a long time.
For 20 years?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. So for a long time.
Yeah.
And so off of that though, because I grew up, I was just talking to my producer, Eddie, here before we started, and he didn't know this about me, but I grew up a 7-day Adventist.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you...
Look at this man.
What?
So I know everything about that religion.
Do you?
I do. Really? So how?
I'm no longer a 7-day Adventist.
But how and why? And
well, my father, it's a family, obviously, most religions, it's a family.
Well, how did he get into it?
From my grandmother. It's been passed down.
Okay.
My grandmother from Jamaica, the Jamaican big 7-day Adventist over there. And so I grew up in this religion. I didn't live with my father, so it was just one day a week that I'd have to go over there. Or if we went on trips, we'd have to be vegan because they don't eat meat. And I remember eating the food at the potlucks or these veggie burgers. Loma Linda. That's where it's part of my family lived down Loma Linda. Yeah. First of all, it's healthy. There's no denying that.
Cutlets and all that. You have those cutlets, those Loma Linda
cutlets. And I'm telling you, Ethan, they were so horrible. They were awful.
Yeah,
it was dog shit. I'm sorry.
Sacrifice.
Well, so that's a big, because I really do believe that's a big reason why most people don't want to embrace this stuff. And that's why it's making such a huge impact now. I don't know if people are becoming woke, to use the Generation Z, whatever that is, the term, but people are loving this stuff because it tastes better now.
Yeah.
So obviously, how did you deal with that? What made you say, okay, you know what? Because the product was already out there, but I'm going to go make it better. How did you start experimenting with that?
So, first of all, 7-day Adventist fascinates me because for a number of reasons, but and people don't know the history of that with Battle Creek and Kellogg and all that stuff. But so they've done these studies around the world. They look at the world's healthiest populations, longest lived, right? And so Loma Linda, California is one of them. It's like Okinawa and some other places.
The blue zones, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, but the more interesting thing for me about that is there was a study done in the 90s about, and this gets to, there's so much to talk to you about, but there's athletics and things. They did a study around the height of populations in Loma Linda. And they took the kids that were in non-7-day Adventist schools and were meat eating and ate the standard American diet. And they took the kids that were in 7-day Adventist schools and were eating vegetarian, lacto-ovo vegetarian. And on average, those kids were taller. Right. And so it flows against the cultural norm here, or the cultural understanding that you need meat to be, super strong, tall, all that stuff. Right. And so there's a lot we can learn from that community. I think where I started to depart from that approach was I didn't think I wanted to make a soybean masquerade as a steak or chicken or something like that. I did no interest in that. That was being done and being done pretty well. Like Gardene's products are pretty decent. Right. And what I wanted to do was to try to understand meat better than anybody else in the world. Like that's really what I wanted to understand is what's the composition of meat? And so, if we talk about this room, we could talk about what all the materials in here are, the wood, where it came from, how the wood is put together, stuff like that. But when we get to meat, it's like, meat's a mystery. It grows on an animal and then we harvest it, right? Well, it's not really a mystery. We can understand what meat is. The bicep that you have, we can put that under an MRI and we can understand exactly what's in it. So we can do that piece of meat, right? And what's fascinating to me is once you start to delve into what meat is, it's actually pretty simple. It's amino acids, it's lipids, it's trace minerals, it's vitamins, it's water, just like your body, just like my body. And that's no coincidence because we all evolved from the same origin of life. And so what I started to do was try to find scientists that were willing to go down that rabbit hole with me, willing to really dive in and say, what constitutes a piece of meat in terms of composition? And then where's the animal getting that from and where else can you get it from? Well, it turns out that we can get it from the same place. What the animal does, think about a cow. They're consuming a large amount of vegetation and they're drinking a lot of water. They use a digestive system in their muscular tract to build muscle for work. They work with their muscles. We then harvest that as a piece of meat. So they've used a biological system to organize external materials into the form of meat. Well, we can use a technological system to do the same thing, starting with the same inputs, with plant material and with water. So if you take our product and you do an MRI of it, and you take a piece of meat that's been harvested from an animal, you do an MRI with, there are differences, but they're slowly collapsing, and we're getting them closer and closer and closer. That's what I wanted to do, more so than just say, hey, I'm going to try to get something that kind of fakes people out and thinks it's a right. And so the question or the request I have of consumers is take a step back for a minute and think about meat, not in terms of its origin. Not meat has to come from chicken, cow, or pig, which we've all been taught, but think about meat in terms of composition, protein, fat, water. If I can deliver that composition to you in the same form, and I can satiate your body and deliver the nutrients in the same form, who's to say that's not meat? I've got a phone in my pocket here, right? It doesn't look like the landline, but I'm not walking around saying, hold on, Tony, I got to get my fake phone. Let me grab my fake phone and answer it, right?
Yeah.
It's just a better version,
Yeah.
right? We have to get people to think about plant-based meat in that way, right? And if you start thinking about it that way, you don't have to denigrate animal protein. That's a bad idea, right? We evolved eating meat, did a lot for us, changed our bodies, made our brains big, our stomachs small. There's all these things that we benefited from meat. But isn't it the quintessential American thing to take something that's good and make it better? That's all we're trying to do.
Yeah. And now you got a whole bunch of different products too. It's not just meat, it's got the sausage, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So you started the company. Tell me about the what was the biggest obstacles at the beginning?
It was finding, let me see. So I funded it for about 2.5 years, 3 years on my own. And I think the biggest challenge that I was having was, the name of our center here, our research center in Los Angeles and El Segundo, is called the Manhattan Beach Project. And it's called that because we're near the beach. But more importantly, I wanted to evoke that sense of urgency of the Second World War effort, the Manhattan Project, in Chicago, later in Oak Ridge, et cetera. And you can't solve big global problems on a small budget. Like technologically, that's, maybe you can do it through movements and things like that. But technologically, if you're going to try to use technology to get us out of a problem, right? Whether it's to win a war or to create the next, replacement for the internal combustion engine, like they're doing at Tesla, et cetera. You've got to have a big budget. You've got to have the best scientists in the world, the best managers in the world, the best engineers in the world. And when you're taking money from, I was in the fuel cell industry for a long time, then started to consult back to my old company so I could spend more time on this project. And I was using my consulting fees to pay my staff, right? And I wasn't, you're not getting paid $1 zillion, right? So how do you, it was frustrating to me to try to launch a massive effort on a shoestring, right? So that was really, really hard. And I got myself in over my head financially for sure. I've told this story once or twice before about when I was pitching Bill Gates the night before, all my credit cards were maxed out and I couldn't get in my hotel room. I was like, this is so strange. Like he's rolling in like super comfortable, and the meeting's like 1 of 10 he was taking that day, and for me it was like life or death,
Yeah.
And it wasn't that, I'd already gotten money from Kleiner Perkins, but I still was just digging myself out of the issues that I'd created financially. But, trying to attack a big global problem with a really small amount of money was really hard.
Was there ever a point that you said to yourself, man, I don't think this is going to work? This is, when you had that credit card debt, how stressful for that?
Oh, really, it was really stressful actually. I can just, the type of things you got to do. And the thing is, what was interesting for me is, I was making a good living before, and I just sort of started to invest all that money into this project. And so I had gone from comfort to, and I was always I didn't go into a desolate state or anything, but to really constrained environment. And that was tricky for me and my family for sure. But it's funny, I don't know that it's anything I can describe. And I'm sure you, being as successful as you are as an athlete, I never thought I would fail.
Really?
That's the weird part. Like, I didn't know the outcome. I didn't know this, but I was never like, oh, it's not going to work. Like,
really?
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't know why. And through, I know there's certain people that, you almost thrive under it. Like I think you do your best thinking when your back's against the wall and you're like, I'm sure you can relate to this as an athlete.
Yeah.
Like, when it's like time's running out, you got to do something. And I actually kind of enjoy that, strangely.
Yeah. Most people that I'm going to say, I can't think of one case right now that since I've been doing Wide Open, anybody who's sat in that chair that doesn't feel that same way. That unbelievable, that hallmark of greatness is confidence, like absolute unshakable belief that I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get this done. There's nothing that's going to stop me. A lot of people sometimes have to go through something to get to that point though.
Right.
I know that's how it was for me, my second year in the league. Everybody who's listening, they're like, here we go again with the story. But I led the league in drop passes. And Yeah, but I do believe that. I still had that underlining thing. I'm going to make it through this,
Yeah.
even though this sucks right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to get through it.
Well, one of the things, I mean, the drop pass is a good example. You know, sometimes you do have to experience failure early in your life to realize it's not that bad. You know, you know, you can, I think that some of the people that struggle the most is who sail through school and sail through life and also think of their first adversity. And they're like, you know, so I had some stuff growing up that, you know, wasn't easy, you know, and that just, you're like, okay, I got through it. I'm still here.
When's the first time though that you're like, you know, we've been going along and we got this? Like when's that first, do you remember like a
really important
day of it? Like,
yeah.
We got this.
A really important day for me, there's been a few, was Kleiner Perkins investing in the business. So, I mean, I can't say enough about the senior partner there, Ray Lane. He's a big mentor to me in my life and in business. You know, I was in the wilderness before that for sure. Like I was spending my own money completely, you know, was tapped family and friends and stuff like that. But when Ray got involved and said, this is something I want to get behind, he brought a lot of people into the business with him. There's Ray and a guy named Amol Despande, who were really helpful to me at the beginning. And so, you know, the reason that Twitter and Biz and Ev got involved was through the connection with Kleiner, Bill Gates, the same thing. So that I look back and say, what big moments happened? That was really a big one that they decided to invest. The others have been around product development breakthroughs. Like, you know, when you just look at something like, okay, this is it. Like we had this great moment back at our old labs in Maryland where we didn't have the kind of big sensory groups we have now, where we're getting ready to launch this chicken product we had. And we cooked up some from Purdue or Foster or something like that, a strip, and then we cooked up ours. We blindfolded an electrician who was working on something in the building. He said, tell us which one is which. And he picked ours as the animal protein. And
really?
Yeah. And so I said, we're ready. Let's go to market. And so there's moments like that. And the last one would really be McDonald's. You know, it's we've had so many great partners along the way, whether A&W, Dunkin, et cetera. And they've just been great. They want this to work. You know, that's the really interesting thing is you meet with these executives at companies and they all want to be providing healthy food to their customers, and they're trying to make their menus healthier and healthier. And so when you relate to them on a human basis, you can see that they want this to work. And so when a company like McDonald's is willing to work with you for years, like people talk about, oh, you're just getting in McDonald's now. No, we've been working with McDonald's for years and years and years, and from one capacity or another. And it's so gratifying to be able to serve customers like that.
Well, speaking of that then, because I definitely want to get into that. You're talking about something, like I said, veganism, veggie patties, chicken cutlets.
You went through it all.
It's been around for a long time. This isn't anything new. Even if it tastes good, sometimes, what about that customer? And there's a lot of those people out there. They're like, I'm eating meat. I don't care what anybody says. How do you go about changing that narrative?
That's where you come in. And that's why what you've done is so incredibly important. And so, and Beth and Kyle here have been amazing for our team. And so when I was growing up and you were part of this, the Got Milk campaign, you know?
Yeah. By the way, I've done a Got Milk campaign.
Yes, I know.
I have a picture of me with the milk mustache, which
absolutely,
which is it's crazy now to think of that. But that's where I was back then. I had to change the narrative.
I drank a ton of milk as a kid, and because we had this dairy farm, and so I paid attention to that campaign a lot. And you know, I loved all the athletes. You know, I think one of the earliest ones I did was Bo Jackson, and then you know, you and Derek Jeter and all that. And I became fascinated with the fact that they could advertise a particular protein in schools to kids where they were eating. Like, so if you go to a lunch line at a standard American school back in the day, they would have a picture of an athlete with a milk mustache, or in the gym, they'd have a picture. And I was like, how does milk get to do that versus any other product, right? Well, they had convinced people, right, that you need this to be healthy and to thrive, right? And so when it came time to build our marketing campaign, I said, you know, that's exactly the message I want to create, because in my case, it's really true. Like, if you're going to consume these products, we can talk about this later, you're going to feel better, you're going to look better, you're going to perform better, right? And I wanted kids to understand that more than anything else. And I wanted to speak to them not by having, you know, dietitians or doctors on TV, you know, saying you've got to do this, you know. I wanted to inspire people by showing them how good someone else can look, feel, and perform by making a change to a plant-based meat. And so I met with a guy named Jeff Manning and ended up hiring him early on. And Jeff was the original sponsor of the Got Milk campaign for the California Milk Board. He's in his 70s now, great guy. So we set up a program But then I met Beth. Probably Beth Moskowitz. I think the moment I moved out to California over 8 years ago now, and it was really with her that we started to bring in some of these really high profile athletes. I think I met you through Beth, and then so many of the folks, and to build this program that communicates to families that, hey, not only is it healthy to do this, but you're going to thrive doing it. Right? That's a different message than watch your cholesterol, son. Right? Let's inspire people to do this, and that's how we go about attacking that notion that you need animal protein to be robust. Right? And I'm sure you've seen the Game Changers. And
seen it. Yeah, I was there at the premiere.
And I love that movie, right? Because that's everything we're about is, the information about the gladiators. And the one point that I probably do differ from most people in my field is that I do acknowledge and appreciate the role that meat had in our evolution. And I mentioned this earlier in the show, but if you look at the history of our species as we began to evolve from primates, one of the key decisions that we made was to, and it was really the Africanus, Australopithecus africanus, was to, the great southern ape of Africa, was to consume more rather than less animal protein. And what that did was it allowed our stomachs to work more efficiently because it was a much more nutrient-dense source of food. So instead of having to eat vegetation all day long, right, we could start eating this really nutrient-dense source of food. So our stomachs shrank a lot, and our brains doubled in size more than. It went from 600 cubic centimeters to about 1,300 cubic centimeters. That changed everything for us. Then we started to be able to plan. We started to be able to do all the things we do as a society here, create all this technology because of these big brains that we have. So I think we're indebted to meat, but we're now smart enough to build meat without using animals. And that to me is really important.
And a lot of people, there are old school people. My mother is one of them. Like, she's like, I don't care what it tastes like. But she wants meat because she's convinced that meat is what's going to give you the strength. And she tells me all the time, that's how I raised you. Yeah. Look at you. You turned out fine. Right. And there are people out there that are going to be like that. That's what I think would be the biggest challenge for anybody who's coming out with a new product or whatever. How do you change the minds of customers to say, okay, this product is not only good for you, it tastes good, but even then, there's still other customers out there. And then what about the meat company? How about them? What has been their response to this? Because obviously you're cutting into their profit, and they're powerful. How have you dealt with that?
They're tough. One is to keep an open tent for sure, to build the biggest tent you possibly can and invite as many people as you can. And so our board, our group of investors rather, has everything from the Humane Society in it to Tyson, the biggest meat company in the U.S. They divested recently when we went public, but I worked with them for years, with John Tyson himself and all of that. I think that having a collaborative approach, not demonizing people, not judging decisions, but rather saying, okay, isn't it part of our heritage to innovate and try to make something better? Mm-hmm. And so Tyson can flourish making plant-based meat.
Yeah,
And I think if you believe our thesis, if you take any sort of microeconomics course or operations class, what they tell you, right, is that you have to get rid of the bottleneck or reduce the bottleneck in your factory, so to make everything more efficient. And we've done that in the sense of remove the animal. The animal is a bottleneck in agriculture. It's a thing that takes so much time, energy, resources to develop, right? So we've taken that out of the system, and we're using plants and water directly. So companies can potentially make more money doing it this way rather than raising animals. And so we just have to educate, talk to, build bridges between the two groups. I've met with the Cattlemen's Association, talked on the phone with them quite a bit, not here in the U.S., but elsewhere. And I think it's important. I don't hate them. There's a lot of animosity toward us, but it's not because we're trying to antagonize or anything else. I think it's a big opportunity for everybody. We use a lot of co-packers that also process meat from animals. So they can, and what I think is really important about that is instead of getting a side of beef or deboned chicken breast that they run through their facilities to create a nugget or to create a burger, they're getting a combination of protein, fat, and water from us, and they're running it through the same type of equipment, right? So we can transition to this in a way that isn't completely disruptive. There will be losers and there will be winners, but there'll be far more winners in it than not.
Is this something that can coexist with?
Yeah, 100%. It has to.
I mean, I don't think ever that people are going to just give up meat. It's like people still want chicken wings and watch football games or a big thing with ribs and all that stuff. Or what is the future? Do you think that as you guys keep coming out with the latest, greatest, you guys are constantly innovating, right? And trying to get it more exact, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Do you ever think it will be where you cannot tell at all? Because I've had Beyond Meat, and obviously I'm an investor and I love the stuff. But I think the sausage, by the way, that is the closest resemblance.
The breakfast or the link?
The link.
Yeah.
The link.
Well, you got to try this new breakfast sausage we have. That's even better.
I've had the breakfast sausage. It's good. But
you like the link better? That's interesting.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I like the link better. But if you get a Beyond Meat burger, you can taste the difference. Yeah, there is. For sure. But by the way, they both taste amazing and it's gone. But you guys are constantly going to keep coming out with new innovations.
We have to. We have to. And it really gets back also again into your culture and career and that's not lost to me that I can remember I was sitting in where I was with the Warriors years ago now, and I was listening to one of their owners speak, and it was about what they built. They talked about relentless, just being relentless, right? And I took that word and I said, that's right. We got to be relentless. And so we built this program called the Beyond Meat Rapid and Relentless Innovation Program. And the goal behind it is to make the products that we currently have on the shelf with our name on them obsolete. And so if you take that mentality, then all the competition is trying to replace you. They got to deal with you first, right? Because you're not sitting there saying, hey, look at this great shiny object creator. You have disdain for it. You want to make it better. When people say, oh, I went out to the store and bought your product, I kind of like, because I know there's something even better that I have that's coming, right? And I want them to have that.
Yeah.
And so you have to have that constant improvement mentality. You'll get killed. And so we try to out-innovate ourselves to save someone else the trouble of doing it.
I like that though. Yeah. I like that, to constantly look at yourself.
But on the question of will people eat meat in the future, 100% they will, absolutely. But the key and the trick is, where will that meat come from? Will it come from plants or will it come from animals? If we do our job right, there's no philosophical argument or debate or argument. It's just about which one is better for me, which one tastes great, which one maybe is better for the earth. Now, if we come out with something that's inferior, we're going to have to argue till we're blue in the face about, do it for this reason, do it for that reason. Our dream, right, is to be able to walk in any McDonald's or Wingstop or what have you, and people are just having a great time enjoying it, tastes just like what they've grown up eating, and now they're having this. And what is so inspiring to me and brings me so much hope is when I speak at college campuses, those kids get this. It's not strange to them, right? It's not sort of like, your mom and my mom have some similarities. My mom, still eats meat. My dad still eats meat, although very little. His wife eats a lot of meat. She believes it's a blood type thing, right? And so, but these kids are so open to the idea of plant-based meat. It's that even that taste that is different that you're talking about, they're becoming familiar with that, right? And so that's a whole interesting idea that there's a whole generation growing up that this is standing for meat. And what does that mean when their kids come into the world? Things like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's like, I always think about that. That's the hardest, is to change people's minds.
Yeah, it is.
God, it's hard. People, like I keep going back to my mom. If I brought out, a Beyond Meat burger, and I cook them and stuff, she won't even try it. But you're right. That's part of that older thinking. And when that generation is gone, the next generation's where it's the true changes.
So I was reading something. I'll have to think of the book in a minute, but I think it's a book called What is Real, and it's about the debate of, anyway, it's about quantum physics something, but it was one of the quotes in it is from Einstein about, most of what we think of as common sense is just what we learned from the age of 0 to 18. Mm-hmm. But just because you learn it during that period in your life doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
But it's very scary to say my parents were wrong, or my pastor was wrong, or my teacher was wrong. It's very scary because it destabilizes you. You all of a sudden feel unsteady.
Yeah.
And so, but my belief and how I've lived my life, or try to, anyway, is to think for myself and to look at something and not just accept it. Yeah. And it takes a lot of work because, it's easier just to operate among assumptions and things like that. Yeah. But, I've talked about this before. Even our relationship to animals, I had to look at a lot when I was growing up and older, and I didn't quite understand how I felt about it and why I felt about it. But then I read Darwin, and I was like, oh, well, there it is. Like, we didn't necessarily, descend from heaven. We ascended from mud and primordial soup, and what that means is we all pass through the same genetic structure. So we all have central nervous systems that are largely the same. We all have intelligence that's differing degrees. Our brains are structured differently, but there's a lot of similarities because that's where we came from. Doesn't mean you can't believe in God. I do. Doesn't mean you can't believe in Christ. I do. But it just means that, like, let's live your life according to facts versus mythology. And if you start to do that, you can make progress.
Yeah. And that's part of what this program it is. By the way, it's like being wide open. Let's wide open. Let's hear a new narrative. Okay. Just try it. And then if you don't like it, you can go back to your old ways.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But isn't it frustrating when someone's just not even willing to examine it?
Oh, I think that's, there's a lot. Well, yeah, there's a lot of people out there, but you're right. I think with the younger generation and having 4 kids and seeing that they call it that woke movement, I do believe that they are open-minded. They're wide open. And it's the best way to be. Let's go out there and try new things and see
more exciting and fun.
If this works. Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. So I want to talk about competition now. First of all, what does competition mean to you? What is that? Do you think competition is good in your line of work? We talked about it a little bit. I mean, there's Impossible, there's Tyson, like you said, they're coming out their own meat alternative. How do you view competition?
Right. I mean, so my glib answer is, competition is good as long as we're winning. But but the real answer is, first of all, get back to your space and where you came from. I just admire so much what you guys can do in terms of inspiring whole communities. I mean, you're the modern day gladiator. And that just, to me, that's fascinating. I really like, it's that idea that you can, because war is obviously not a good thing, right? But competing against another person, I think, is interesting and fun, right? And to give it your all and to rally a team against another team, those things to me are great. Like, that's fun. And it's part of, there's something in us as humans that wants to do that, and we shouldn't abandon that, in my view. Now, we shouldn't do it in ways that are, harmful or destructive, and that's why I think war is so bad. But organized sports, I think, are great because it allows you to express that sense of, like, I want to be better, and even being better than someone else is okay to want that, right? As long as it's the right context. And so, in business, you get the opportunity to keep doing that, and there are people that it rubs the wrong way. In my own organization, say, Ethan, why are you so focused on being the very best plant-based meat company? Why not just, welcome everybody and kumbaya and stuff like that? That's fine. I do want other companies to be successful. I don't want Impossible to fail. I'd like them to be successful for sure. But sure, I'd like to be better than them. And I'm okay with that. It's okay. I think it drives you. It pushes you. It allows, one of the best things about having competition out there is I can go to our team and be like, and also particularly competition that talks a lot of smack, that's helpful to me, right? Because I don't say anything bad about other companies publicly. I think they're doing a good job. But occasionally see an officer from another company say something negative about us. Well, what do? I go down there to 85% of our scientists came out of biomedical. They're smart as hell. I go, look what this person said about your product relative to theirs. And what does that mean for you? Let's go get this. That helps. But it is funny. Where I went to business school, there was a quote in the computer lab that I loved. And it was a picture of an apartment building that had one light on it and somebody leaning over a computer. And it said, somewhere someone is working harder on your idea than you. And I couldn't find that same picture. So I just put it on a blank canvas, put that quote on there, and I hung it in our innovation lab. And a couple of guys came up to me once and said, everyone wants to know who's working harder than us. We don't understand. And I was like, no, it's not like a particular person. It's like a saying. It's like a thing. And so, okay, fine. But then the head of innovation came to me and said, Ethan, this is really causing problems. People want to know what this is about. I said, okay, well, it's like in a locker room. Like there's a team out there that wants to take the title and they're going to, he said, Ethan, none of these guys have been in a locker room.
I know. So, these guys are...
so I was like, okay, I'll take it down.
Nerds.
So I took it down. But he was not being generous. Plenty of them have been, but he was making his point.
Yeah.
And so I think overall, the competitive spirit is a good one. I'd love to get to that Zen place that you've been, and sometimes I am. I mean, we're doing this not to compete with other people. We're doing it to make the world a better place, but it's fun along the way.
By the way, I was a nerd too. No offense to nerds out there. But yeah,
if you walk in, you see him as a nerd. Is that believable?
Yeah, that could be a nerd. People come in, they see all the books. They're like, "What are you doing? You do books?"
I got you.
Well, you know what? Let's transition to that. Learning. You obviously you're well read. You read a lot of books, and you're constantly trying to learn. How has that played a big a part in your development with the company?
I love reading. I love new information, and I don't think you need to go to school to be expert in something. I think you'd have a natural curiosity and some capability to absorb the information is important, but why go through life without soaking in as much knowledge as you possibly can? And a book can change your life. It can change your perspective, and it certainly has mine. I mean, I had this notion about the way I felt about the rest of life on Earth, but I didn't quite understand the context. And I really started to read. I read a great book years ago called The Moral Implications of Darwinism and of Darwin. That made a big impact. I mean, many books have. I just find it's kind of like food, like something you got to have. It's something that I really worried the most about with this generation of kids growing up is the written word is really disappearing, right? It's the video. So it's interesting, when you go to these universities and stuff, you ask them, how did you get interested in this subject? And it's never a book anymore. It's always, which is not, I don't know, maybe it's just change, but it's movies. It's things like Forks Over Knives or Game Changers or stuff like that. And so that's really, I think one of the reasons this movement is spreading so quickly is it's really easy to absorb this information because documentaries are being made about it.
Yeah.
And like when you and I were growing up, you had to get off the bus or whatever and get someone put a pamphlet in your hand and say, this is how animals are treated in factory farms. Today, kids can just send it on their handheld phones and they're seeing it. So that the rapidity at which information is now disseminated among younger people, I think, is leading to so much change.
Well, I want to talk about that. What do you say to somebody who doesn't believe that meat is destroying our climate? Like, what are some statistics off the top of your head on Tony?
No, sure.
Like, because I believe too that's part of the narrative. And by the way, and I'll be honest with you, like I'll probably always eat meat. I enjoy certain aspects of especially from a traditional standpoint, like preparing dishes, until it gets to a point where it's like, hey, I can't even tell the difference here. And that's where you guys are headed. That's your goal as a company. But what do you say to the people out there? Because that was one of the reasons why I've been so conscious too. First of all, it's at the health reasons, but the global impact of what meat does, cows specifically, how does that impact the planet?
So what's really important in that regard is not to just focus on the animal themselves, but all of the ecosystem that has to go around that animal to support the animal. And so there's been a lot of debate about this subject. The United Nations came out with an 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions figure. Then they batted it down to about 14.5. But you have to think about what the United Nations is. I mean, it's a great group for sure. But there's a lot of political pressure there as well. And so some independent scientists have done work which shows a much higher contribution. Some have said it's up to 50%. And what those larger numbers are thinking about, whether or not that one is right or not, I'll leave that aside for a second. But if you look at the changes in the soil, the fact that there's an unnatural number of animals on the Earth's surface. I mean, think about that. There's over 100 billion animals in the agricultural system at any given time. And animals breathe. I mean, science can do a lot of things, but inventing an animal that doesn't breathe is probably a pretty tough thing to do. And so when they respire, they're respiring carbon. So it's not just the methane, right? And so, and then it's everything from the water use to the land use. 80% of our arable land now is used to feed livestock. And nothing is new in this regard. So there's a book written in 1971 called Diet for a Small Planet. And in that, they basically make this point that pulling food and protein directly from plants versus running it through an animal is the right way to do it because our planet's not big enough to keep running it through an animal. Well, that was done many, many, many years ago. We had a lot less animals on their surface. Today, we have so many animals around to support the human population that it just doesn't work mathematically. So we have to figure out a way to decouple meat from animals, and that's what our company's about. The climate can't sustain China and India coming into the same protein-rich lifestyle that we have unless we do it from plants. And so, interesting about China, if you look at what's happening now with their hog population, they had to cull 50% of their total hog population. That's about 25% of the world's pigs, right? So overnight, almost 25% of the world's pork supply went away, right? And so for us as a business opportunity, we have to move extremely quickly to try to capture that and say, let's provide people with an alternative so they don't have to go reinvest in those herds. Let's help them to leapfrog over that particular way of providing protein And now there's a crisis in the world, which is the absence of the lower numbers of pork that we can take advantage of. And so we're trying to do that.
Uh-huh. And that's part of that global protein company. That's what I've read that's what you guys want to be as a company.
Extremely important to me.
And what does that mean?
So you'll see us this year be very active in Asia, in China, specifically mainland China. And I think that you look at JBS, you look at Hormel, you look at Tyson. I don't see any reason that we can't be at least their size. We have so many people globally that want to elevate to a protein-rich diet, and if they do it using animals, we won't make it. And so we have to figure out a way to serve that population. As you become more affluent, you want more meat, right? That's a pretty standard relationship. And as we raise affluence in different economies, we've got to make sure that we provide protein that's sustainable.
I agree. Okay, finishing up here, I want to talk a little bit about more of your personal stuff. Sleep. How important is, obviously, I bring this up to almost everybody because I'm a huge believer in sleep. It's kind of changed my life over the last couple of years.
Right.
I've seen it, cognitive improvements, body improvements, everything.
That's great.
What's your sleep routine like?
So I agree with you on those points, and I try to get as much as I can. The challenge is around travel, as you know.
Yeah.
It's you get in a hotel late at night, and you got to be up really early the next day. So there'll be nights where you get really, really little sleep, and you can tell your thinking isn't as clear, and your speech is not as clear. You have trouble, responding as quickly to things. So I think for performance, it's extremely important. I don't get enough for sure, but I'm aware of it. For me, I think the personal routine that I have that has been most effective for me in the office is to treat coming into work like a game. I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you, but that's how I think about it in the sense of, am I mentally prepared? Am I physically prepared? Have I loaded myself up with a bunch of carbohydrates that can make me tired 2 hours later, right? And so I get up early. I'll try to meditate if I have time, but I'll always work out. I can't go to work without working out. I got to clear my system of that, and I have to get sort of balanced and centered to go into work. And then it's onslaught. Everything's coming at you 1,000 miles a minute, and so you got to be centered. And for me, a really rigorous exercise before I go to the office is important.
Every day you work out 5 days a week?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
5, 6, 7 days a week, or
on the weekends I do whatever I want to do.
And how long is your workout?
It's short. I do. So in the morning I will row really hard for about half an hour, and rowing is hard. And so I'll be drenched in sweat, and I'll try to go hug my kids goodbye, and I'll be like, "Get away from me!"
Shower first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then if I have time, I'll bike a little bit, and then I take a break at 2:30 in the afternoon, and I work out. I lift. It's a half an hour. And,
so you're working out. You're working out a lot.
Well, I try, but but there's this latest edition of Scientific American that has this in it, and I'm looking forward to reading this article. But the cover is around, we were meant to exercise, and so much of. Again, it gets back to bipedal and the relationship to animals. We evolved chasing animals, right? And so that the relationship of the chemistry around movement and brain activity is really important to me. And it's a part evolutionary sort of. There's evidence around why that was important. Yeah. And so I think getting away from that, I couldn't imagine trying to handle the level of stress that we have in our lives when you're running a company without exercising. I couldn't do it. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to do it. So that's important.
You do infrared sauna, cold showers, cold plunge,
Not yet.
Nothing like that?
I did go swimming in the ocean the other day. But
that's cold.
It was cold. It was cold.
Out here in California.
Yeah.
What about, I'm thinking what else, like biohacking type things too. And I'm looking for your secrets, because people out there, because I'm a big believer in people's routines, especially people, if you want to just copy genius, I want to see what he's doing. And maybe
the fasting I do.
The fasting,
that's kind of interesting.
Intermittent fasting.
Yeah, I do that every day.
Okay, every day. Yeah. And what's your feeding window?
I don't eat. I try not to eat after 8, but I really am not that strict on that one. But I definitely don't eat until 11, and on the weekends till probably later, just because I'm busy with stuff. So,
do you do that? This is just part of your routine now?
Yeah, and it feels great.
I know. I intermittent fast too.
Yeah, and it just feels really like cleansing every day, and you have that sort of. What they call the falcon, or you're hungry enough to be hyper alert, but you're not so hungry that you're kind of like just losing it.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, the final questions here. What's the number one meat that you're struggling to duplicate?
So I think that the Holy Grail for us is really around bacon and steak, and those are more difficult because they're naked in presentation to the consumer in the sense that you can see where the fat is, you can see where the protein is in a piece of bacon, for example, and then steak, same thing. It's a sort of whole muscle, right? So those are hard. A true fresh chicken breast is hard because it has that almost translucent skin to it, and so those are difficult. We'll get there. I mean, it's the wonderful thing about this project that I love so much is that when I was in the fuel cell industry, we were competing against diesel engines quite a bit in one of our sectors. And I remember we met with the largest diesel engine company in the world, and the CEO said to us, our efficiency is X. It was Cummins power generation, and we've increased our efficiency by this amount. And I realized, we're going after a target that keeps getting better, right? They were getting more and more efficient, and in this case, you can't make the animal more efficient than it is already. Like, we've done everything we can do, because as we try to create more efficiency within animal agriculture, the consumer pushes back. They're like, no gestation crates. They want the battery cages bigger for the animals. The weight that we're putting onto a bird now is so heavy they can't walk. Yeah. So that these things that are happening where we've reached the limit of improvement, and so it's a static target. And then here we have this. So we have all this science and all this engineering and talent going after replicating that, right? And it's standing still. So it's kind of almost a inevitability that we're going to get there. Right? And so these things are complicated, but we can get them. We can send someone to the moon. We can do this.
Would you ever put like a little bone in thing? Like, I talked about baby back
all the time. I talk about this all the time. People go crazy about this. Like
a chicken, like you said, how about after the Thursday night football game during Thanksgiving, go up there, one of those MVP, Aaron Rodgers, come out there and just take a big fake
I'm talking about this MVP over here. Let's get him to, during one of the Fox shows, let's get you to do. If I do that, will you grab a bite of it?
You'll have a fake leg.
It'll take me a while, but if I do that,
of course I'll eat it. I'll get those guys.
Okay. But what I would like to do on that is, could we make it even better? This is a little crazy. Could you make it so it's consumable and it has things in it you want? Like,
the bone?
Remember those dipping things you used to? Yeah.
Oh, to have the bone and then eat it, like
let's say super calcium rich,
like a cone, like a.
Well, what's the thing you put in the
Dippin' Dots?
No, it's not the Dippin' Dots.
Dipstick.
Dipstick. You just throw the dipstick out after you done? No, you eat that.
I know.
You crack it. It tastes good.
I remember those were the expensive candies. I didn't have enough money for that one, man. I was a Jolly Rancher guy.
Jolly Rancher. Didn't know it hurt your teeth and stuff.
Yeah, you did. That's why I had cavities. Yeah. Dream dinner party. Who would you invite? 3 guests, living or dead?
Oh man,
I already know what you'd serve. What would you serve? What's your favorite product? 3 guests, and then what would you serve from the Beyond Meat?
That's a great question about the 3 guests.
Yeah, think of it. I don't know. Think about James Brown. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Woodrow Wilson.
I'd absolutely pick Lincoln. Like, I'm fascinated.
Lincoln, okay. So Lincoln.
I'd love to sit down with Lincoln. Yeah, for sure. I'd obviously pick Jesus.
Jesus, yeah. That's actually a pretty common answer. A lot of people pick Jesus.
Yeah. And then who'd be my third? I just saw a movie on Harriet Tubman. I'd probably pick her.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I mean, with the risk she took, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
The pain she went through would be fascinating to me. But it might change, and it depends on what my motive is. Yeah, what's my night like? What's it?
I always pick it. I'm like, I got to have a fun guy there. I think I had Frank Sinatra there or something. Like, somebody there who's going to have some cocktails and tell some jokes, make us laugh too. We can't just be all philosophical. Right. That's just me for my dinner. Yeah. I don't want to be too serious all the time. It's like, hey, I like to fluctuate between Neanderthal and Gandhi.
Yeah, well, Gandhi's interesting too. So I got.
What would you serve him? What's your number one product that you're like, man, this is going to hit him? Like, if you're a chef, I love asking chefs this. What is the thing that you're going to serve somebody and you got to impress the hell out of them?
Right.
From your line, what is your number one thing?
I mean, the thing that I'm most proud of is probably our breakfast sausage, and here's why. So when you bite into a piece of our product, you're having 50% of the fat that you'd get in a normal pork sausage. You're getting 37% less saturated fat, but you're also getting more protein and more iron. To me, that is kind of like the phone we've been talking about, or the car we've been talking about. Let's just make it better, right? Not just on par, but let's make it better. I think that product is better. Nice. I'm proud of that one.
So the breakfast sausage.
Everyone be having breakfast. That's it. Breakfast sausage.
That's it. You just get breakfast sausage. That's all we got. Book recommendations. Give me your top 3 for people out there that want to level up, get better.
Right. Just started a book called Loon Shots by Safi Bakal. It's about how to foster a culture of innovation. I think it's pretty good. I'm reading 2 books that are questions. One is What is Life, which is about the origin of life. I think it's really interesting. The other is What is Real, which I mentioned earlier, about the debate about quantum physics and this idea that observation changes things.
Yeah.
Those books are interesting to me.
Oh, I love those books. Yeah. I haven't read them, but I mean, I
love
those type of books.
I love biographies too. Like, I mean, biographies I'll go all day.
What's your best biography ever? Somebody's like, hey, you got to go read this one. This is the one.
One of the ones I found just gripping that I couldn't put down was Tyson's.
Mike Tyson's book.
I loved that book. I love what he's been through, and I don't love it. It was hard for him. It's awful for him. But what he's been able to do with his life after going through, people judge some of the things he did and things like that. But like, try to walk in his shoes as a kid. Try to go through what he went through, and come out where he is today. Yeah. It's a fascinating read.
Yeah. Good. All right. Final question. What's one area of your life that you'd like to improve in, that you're wide open to learning more about?
If you'd asked that first, we could spend the whole hour on it. I got a lot of things.
The one area, though. The one area that you're wide open to learning more about.
Yeah. There's an intensity to everything that I'm doing right now that, like, there's a toll to it, right? And so how do you move things forward in a way that is not depleting? That's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what I'm doing, and I love the mission, but just need to figure out a way to make sure that I'm able to do it for a long time. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Ethan. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Of course. Good to see you, Richie. Thank you.
All right, good stuff. That was fun, interesting. The Beyond Meat line, I can't wait to see where it's going, because you see where it's at now, and it tastes great. I encourage everybody out there to go try this stuff and try different brands too. My thing is, obviously I'm an investor in Beyond Meat. There's no hiding that. But if you don't like it, try Impossible. Try the different ones, because you are having first of all, an impact on your body, and you're having an impact on the planet, which is what I'm more concerned about. I'm more concerned about the planet and the impact globally on what these animals are doing. So that's the reason I love being a part of this whole thing. But the stuff is good. I'm telling you, it is good. You just have to get past that whole, oh, it's fake, because you probably tried something in the past that was horrible, like I did growing up, and I was like, but being a vegan was never for me, and I don't want to be a vegan, but I do want to cut back on my meat consumption. Just like we found out in here, it just makes you feel better. That's all there is to it, and you're having an impact on the planet. So I encourage everybody to go out there, try it. Try Beyond Meat first, because they're the best, and then if you don't like that, try the other ones. Don't get turned off right away, and stick with them. So.